Max, what's up, man? Glad to have you on here. How would you introduce yourself for people who may not know you?
Well, I am a semi-retired businessman. I an author. I live in South Florida. Done pretty well. I sold my business for $37 million in 2017, and now I just kind of spend a lot of my time coaching people, providing guidance, traveling, and enjoying life.
We'll get into all of that later, but I want to start from the beginning. What was your childhood like?
Childhood was pretty good. We didn't have much, but I was raised with a lot of my cousins. So we had a lot of fun, as a kid. You play hide and seek and basketball and baseball and stuff like that. But we didn't. I didn't have a very. We didn't have a lot of money growing up, basically.
Hmm. What's one childhood memory that makes you smile?
I would say, playing video games with my cousins. Playing video games and kind of just hanging out. When
Hmm.
life was a lot simpler then. As you get
Hmm.
older, you start getting more responsibilities and
Hmm.
there's more things to think about. I think when you're a kid, one of the best parts about being a kid is that you really don't think about much other than entertaining yourself, having fun and
Hmm.
you know
Yeah, that's
time.
true. That's true, honestly. Did you have somebody who you were looking up to as a kid?
My father, I'd say, is the
Hmm.
person the most. He was, um, I think a lot of kids have their father as their inspiration. For me, you
Hmm.
know, I I think it could be tricky for some people because some people have like really good examples of a good father and other people don't. But either
Hmm.
way, as a kid, you still look up to your father. I
Yeah.
think I got in many ways because my dad was a pretty good example. Not he wasn't
Hmm.
perfect, but pretty good, pretty good dad.
Interesting. Well, honestly, none of our fathers are perfect, to be honest. But it's
That's right.
like, hey, man, I think that every single parent is doing the best they actually can, in my
Yeah,
opinion. And there's got to be some respect to that because I don't imagine that raising a kid in, even especially in today's age, is anything is a easy task. I don't imagine that's easy.
I agree. I agree. I think
Go ahead. You want to say
it's
something?
getting yeah, it's getting a lot harder these days with all technology and things like that.
Mm.
Years ago, send your kids out, let them play. I mean, I felt like there's a lot more to be scared of or to shelter your
mm.
kids these days.
Mm.
They it's almost to the entire world with their cell phones. So there's a lot more
Yeah.
things that you're weary of and like, protect them from.
Hmm. Interesting. I want to get into the reason or when you decided that okay, I don't actually want to go to regular go to school to go to college 9 to 5 and that's the end of my life. Where did you decide to try entrepreneurship? When did you decide to go into entrepreneurship in general?
Well, I think I actually started it very young. Like in the book, I talk about how I started selling mangoes as a child. So I was like 5 years old. Later on in like seventh grade, I decided I was going to sell candy. And that was an incredible taught me a lot about buying low, selling high, things like that, doing math.
Hmm.
After high school, when I started working part time, filling the propane tanks, that's when I had the idea for my business. And
Hmm.
I saw that I was actually making some pretty good money doing that. I said, I'm making more money than people are making after college right now.
Hmm.
So why would I go to college? I might as well give
Yeah.
it a shot, see what happens. And if it doesn't work out, I can always go to college later.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah. So what was your first ever like business idea? And what before we get into that, I want to ask you one more thing. Do you think that childish creativity, like selling lemonade, selling candies, etc., do you think that had any effect on entrepreneurship as an adult, like compared to people that didn't do anything like similar to that?
I think I mentioned that in the book as well. It is it provided a foundation for me, honestly,
Hmm.
because it's that, like you mentioned, someone else might not have had. Well, I already had a plethora of experience because I had experience with buying and selling and interacting with
Hmm.
customers and negotiating prices and things like that. People telling me they were going to pay me later, which I was like, no, you got to pay me now. There's a lot of things like that,
Yeah.
that it basically provided like a training. Even though you're selling candy or mangoes, fruits, whatever, you might
Mm.
say, oh, it's kind of silly, but it's really not, because the principles are the same.
Mm.
That's business, customer service, supply and demand, pricing. All those things are the same, whether you're selling a mango or a $500 million piece of land. It's or jewelry, I'd say, better said. So
Mm.
there's things that you have to that are the same in any business: buying, selling, customer service, how to sell, how to interact
Mm.
with people. All that is the same regardless of what level. Obviously, you could get better at it, you get more sophisticated,
Mhm.
and you sharpen your skills, but for the most part, it was a great skill that I developed at a young age.
That's amazing. So, what was your as an adult, as like what was your first business idea that that kind of started working? The first business idea that got you some results, whatever that may be.
Well, as a child, it was candy. As an adult,
Mm.
um, it was the propane business. That was the
Mm.
first. I also bought and sold cars, like
Mm.
briefly, having fun with it, but it wasn't the same. When I started selling propane gas is something that people need every
Mm.
day, because they're cooking with it. They need it for their hot water. They need it for different types of businesses. When I started selling that, it was very clear that there was a need for it. So I just scaled
Mm.
that business as big as I could.
Hmm. Interesting. So there's this term called entrepreneur instead of entrepreneur. A lot of people calling themselves entrepreneurs, but they don't even have a product. They
Right.
they don't even like they have all these ideas, but they didn't even act upon them. They didn't even like start working on it. They just talk about it. And at what point do you think uh, it's qualified to call somebody like an entrepreneur? Is it like when they make their first dollar? Is it when they make a product? Is it when something shifts in their paradigm? It's at what point do you think?
I think it'd be safe to call someone an entrepreneur when they have a track record and have
Mm.
taken action on developing some type of business. Now, it's funny because you could call someone who's made $1 an entrepreneur. You could also call someone $10 billion an entrepreneur. So that being said, you can call a lot of people an entrepreneur. Now the difference is successful of an entrepreneur. You throw around the term, you
Yeah.
know entrepreneur, okay, but at what level? How successful have
Mm.
you been? Give me an example of your greatest success in entrepreneurship, for example. That
Mm.
would be a question I might ask somebody. And then there
Mm.
you might, find out, well, I sold something for $1. Okay, cool. You're just
Mm.
starting out. Or I've made $10 million last year. Wow, incredible. You're doing really great. So I think that's a key distinction in in your question. You could
Mm.
probably call a lot of people entrepreneurs, but at what level are they? I think that's the more important question.
Interesting. There are some people that make $1 million a year, but they're employed for somebody. They're not working on their own. I'd say that's like a high corporate job, but that's not an entrepreneur. Even if he makes a million a year or half a million a year, but he's still like he doesn't have the time or location freedom. He doesn't have any control over his work, and he has a boss that tells him what to do. So I
Right.
still think that's just a higher level employment in employ how do you call that word in English? Fucking hell. Yeah, employee. Yeah, that's it. that
I'll tell
that's
you what, a lot of people are very successful being employees. Not everybody
mm,
needs an entrepreneur, and nor they shouldn't. Not everybody should be an entrepreneur. Everybody has different talents, different gifts, different skill sets, and running a business isn't for everyone. You know, running a
Mm,
business in the ass. It's very stressful,
mm,
and and you know, in many cases, there's people like you said who are employees. For example, professional athletes,
mm.
soccer players, 200 million a year. They're you know they're
Yeah.
employees. So it's nothing wrong with being an employee. Everybody has a different role to play in this life, and just because you're not an entrepreneur doesn't mean that you're not successful or you're on your right path.
Mm. I see a lot of these like even like 15, 16-year-old kids with freelancing making like 10K a month. And
Right.
honestly, that's such a smart thing that find a skill that you have and try to help businesses with that. For
Hmm.
example, I at the beginning of this year I did email marketing gig for a cafe in London and I made like a couple $100 with that and that was like my first money online. And it's
Yeah.
like I learned the skill of sales, or at least the basics of it. I've been trying to learn about entrepreneurship ever since I was like 15. So this was like my first money online. It's like um, it's like these freelancers, the higher level freelancers that are working with big businesses. It's like they get a lot of important testimonials, and then they help bigger and bigger businesses. They may not have a business of their own. They're making good money with helping businesses make more money and taking commission. That's also a good way I see it to make money.
That's a ton of ways. I bet you when you made that first couple $100, you were super excited.
My first payout was I believe $120, and I spent that on a trip to Prague, and I enjoyed that money. I enjoyed that. I bought a steak in Prague in a really fancy
Like,
restaurant, and I enjoyed that steak to the last bite, and I don't have to regret it.
that's- yeah, I remember like all those moments, like the smallest amounts of
Mm,
money that I've probably ever made. Those are like the most important amounts, first of all, and they're most impactful and they're memorable. You know, you remember.
mm,
I remember the first money that I made, you know, and then now I'll do big deals and I make whatever, $1 million and I don't even think about it. But
mm.
that first money, it's the important money because it gives you like hope and
Yeah.
you I can do this. This is exciting. Like there's more to this, you know? So
Mm,
I don't know. I think that's pretty funny how you think back
yeah.
on stuff like that. Remember that for the rest of your life, that steak.
Yeah. Can I ask you something? What was the biggest mistake you made in the beginning, in like in your 20s, probably in terms of entrepreneurship? Like, what was one of the biggest mistakes you did?
I always say hiring my friends was the biggest mistake.
Oh,
Yeah.
why is that?
Hiring because they didn't have the skill sets that I needed. And instead of looking for
Mm,
people who had the skills that I needed, I just got my friends who were close by because they were available and they would work cheap.
mm,
And what I needed to have done was find out exactly who I need and give them a
mm,
job to make my life easier. Instead, it was kind of like they were helping me, but I was helping them because I was giving them a job, but they also couldn't do all the things that I needed them to do. So that cost me a lot of time and energy.
mm. Yeah. So I saw a quote like a six how should I say it? The overnight success comes from 90% failure and the 10% success. And so what this represents is the majority of successful entrepreneurs actually had a lot of failed businesses that people don't see. And then the one that finally succeeds or the finally that's profitable, they call that an overnight success, but they don't see the past failures. I want to ask you, what was like, did you have any businesses that failed in the past?
Thankfully, not
Hmm.
yet, nothing yet. But in my case, I would say it wasn't that I had things that failed and then one day I made a lot of money and I was an overnight success. What happens a lot is that people don't see all the work that you're doing, you know?
Hmm.
They see the end result. So,
Hmm.
like, I used to work every fucking day, you
Hmm.
know, week, Christmas, holidays,
Hmm.
everything. And then you pull up in a Mercedes and they're like, "Oh, well, you got it made, you know? You make plenty of money." It's like, "Yeah, you don't even know what I did to get all this money, right? The sacrifices that were made, and how hard I've worked. People just see the car and think that you have
Mm.
it easy. They don't see all the work that you've put in,
Yeah.
you know, which is an important part. It's the most important part of being successful.
Mm.
Being determined enough and having the willpower to say, okay, I'm not going to do things that are necessarily fun right now. I'm going to do what needs to be done so I could go make some money and improve
Mm.
myself.
So some people, like, there are two types of like people with goals, like the ones that are realistic and then ones that are dreaming big or thinking big. It's like you have to have a certain balance between these. But what do you think? What separates like being realistic from thinking and dreaming really big, like being like
I hate the word and I don't like when people tell me are realistic or unrealistic because it's a bunch of shit. People, so for example, things that were, for example, like this phone conversation right now.
Mm.
We are using phone. I'm using a phone. You're probably using a PC.
Yeah.
That's made out of minerals and rocks and shit like that. And with that technology, you're speaking to me from
Yeah.
across the world.
Yeah.
There's no wires here. There's no connection. It's Bluetooth and Wi-Fi and all this shit. How does that work? Well, the
Crazy.
first people who had those ideas, if you said, "Hey,
Yeah.
would it be realistic to get some rocks and some minerals, put them together, and talk to someone on
Yeah.
the other side of the world, say, listen, you're a fucking lunatic, you're crazy, and guess what? That's not realistic." so, it's only unrealistic until you do it. It's
Mm.
only unrealistic until you do it. There's a million ideas, a million technologies, a million things that people have done that were unrealistic. And then once you do it, guess what? It's not. So I that term because it's limiting. And you don't have limits. You
Mm.
don't have limits. You can do whatever you want. Look at fucking Elon Musk talking about going on Mars.
Yeah.
People think he's crazy. He's going to do it. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
At some point, maybe not in our lifetime, maybe in our lifetime, but at some point it'll happen, right? And then it won't be so crazy anymore.
Yeah, like honestly, again, even 100, 200 years ago, if you told this example that you just gave, people would call you crazy. So
Yeah,
people calling
they would kill you. They'd say that you're a witch, and they'd say that you're a witch, and they'd kill you. That's how they used to handle it. Hey, they'd say you were a witch, and they'd kill you. Oh, this guy's talking about making some crazy shit. Hang him.
Yeah. So when, like, as you gave an example, Elon thinking about going to Mars, people saying that's unrealistic. Honestly, with the technology I think is gonna be in the future, I do not think that that's gonna be unrealistic by any means. I honestly can't even imagine. Like, there are like some disease that can't be treated right now. I highly believe that in 100 years from now, the medicine is gonna be so high level that there is gonna be a cure for that. So a lot of things that we cannot see right now, it's like those primal ancestors, what they could not see, what we have right now. So I think that a lot of these ideas are just realistic, especially as the world moves on.
Absolutely. So that question, there's no such thing as unrealistic.
Mm.
No
So
such.
why do you think that so many people give up? They give up on their dreams and they just wanna they just give up and go get a normal job and they do not stick to it. Why do you think that happens?
When it gets hard and they don't want it bad enough.
Hmm.
Pretty, you know, when it gets hard, because it gets hard for everybody. You have to really want it bad enough, and different people are motivated by different things.
Mm.
I wanted to give up plenty of times,
Mm.
but I just wouldn't let myself, and I think people give up easily because they just don't want it bad enough, or they just can't see
Mm.
themselves being successful, or they're maybe doing it for the wrong reasons. When you're
Mm.
doing it for yourself, when you have leverage on yourself, when you're doing it for the right reasons, when you really want it, you don't give up, you don't quit.
Mm. So So, did you have a moment where you wanted to quit? And I know you mentioned that, but what was that like for you? At what point?
I had many, many moments where I wanted to quit. Countless moments, probably, I would tell you, where I wanted to quit daily, that you
Mhm.
go through things and you're like, this sucks. Why am I doing this? And you just have to push through, man. Like that temporary defeat. I don't like to lose. I don't think
Mm,
anybody to lose, but I just found fun in, like, okay, I have a roadblock, right? Like, one of the things that
mm,
happened to me one time was one of my employees, they crashed into him and he killed somebody. Somebody died.
mm.
My insurance company tripled the cost of my insurance. And it
Oh.
wasn't my, and dude, let me tell you, at that moment, I felt like giving up. I said, this is bullshit, you know, doesn't make any sense. And after I cried about it for a little while, and I don't mean literally cried, I mean like complained,
Mm,
I said, okay, now that I'm done being a baby, let me think about how am I going to solve this problem.
mm.
I got to work on solving the problem. And you know what? I solved the problem pretty easily when I was clearly, when I wasn't being a victim, you know? So I think
Mm,
that's probably another one of some very good advice for when you feel like you should give up and you feel like you should quit. When you
mm,
stop having that victim mentality and woe is me, oh my God, my life sucks,
mm,
everything's like, once you get out of that and you start saying, okay, how do I solve this? What are the ways I can solve this? Whose help do I need? That when you start thinking of things as solvable, guess what? You solve them. You solve them. Things get solved. It's not the end of the world. You can solve things. Um, but you know, pushing through and obviously, like I mentioned, wanting whatever it is that you're doing.
mm,
I think for me was a huge. Like I just wanted to continue to grow and grow, and it wasn't necessarily about money. I just wanted to grow. So if I
mm.
quit, I'll be able to grow.
So then the question lies: do you think that okay, I don't want to say everybody, anybody technically could make it if they tried hard enough and for long enough?
It depends, in my opinion, I would say it depends on what your skill set is. The
Mm,
Bible says everybody's given a different gift. Some people have physical gifts, some people they're great at math, other people are great salesmen, some people swim amazing, some people are amazing fishermen. Everybody has a different gift. I think if you're playing towards your strengths, there's no reason why you can't make it. Like
mm,
if you're doing something, like for example, I'm trying to think of what it was that they mentioned to me. Oh, so we were talking about like kids in school. And, in
mm.
college, they make you do, English, math, science, blah, blah, blah. Well, what you'll find is there's a lot of kids that are like really good at math
Mm,
and then they suck at science, or they're extremely good at science and they're not
mm,
good at, English. So what school does is they make you take all these classes, right? They make you
mm,
take, they call them electives here in the States. I don't know if they call them that over there. So you have to take these electives. You're forced to take
mm,
English. You're forced to take science. Forced to take math in order to graduate. But if you're
mm,
exceptional at math, you're like a
mm,
badass. Why not just focus on math and forget all the other shit? You're never going to be amazing in English or in science and all these things.
mm,
Just focus on what you're good at and really try to take that to the next level.
mm,
You already have the skill. You know that you have it. Imagine what you could become if you stopped wasting time in all those other areas that you just know that they either don't interest you or you're not going to be that
mm,
good at it. If you focus on what you're good at, you can go so much further. I could take myself as a perfect example.
mm.
I'm not good at a lot of things. There's a bunch of things that I'm not good at. But guess what? I was good at running a business. I was good at hiring people. I was good at sales. And with those skills, I've made millions and millions of dollars.
Mm.
Now, tell me to go pass a fifth grade science class, I might fail it, right? It's the truth. I could possibly fail that. If you put me in an algebra class, I
Mm.
will fail. I will fail. I know nothing about algebra, but I'm rich. How does that happen? I don't need to know algebra, right? I'm not starting a company on how to do algebra. That wasn't my goal. And there's millions and millions of people who are just like me. You think all these professional soccer players and baseball players and basketball players
Mm.
are geniuses geniuses in science and math? No, a lot of
No.
them probably have no fucking clue about any of that stuff. But they're great at basketball. But they're great at soccer. You know, if you focus on that one thing that you're
Mm,
good at and you want to propel yourself in, you will get good results. But if you try to
mm,
focus on seven other things that don't matter plus your one thing, well, it's going to be very difficult for you to be successful.
hmm. Yeah, being exceptional in one thing. That's
Hmm.
interesting.
And
So,
focus.
oh, oh, yeah. So, what's the key to long-term success? Let's say that you have a business that just literally started making a lot of money. How do you make sure that you don't fuck up, and how do you make sure that it keeps running for a longer period of time, not just 1 or 2 years?
Consistency.
Hmm.
Consistency. That's the secret sauce of every business. You go to McDonald's in Prague, Miami, the
Hmm.
burgers it's consistently
Hmm.
done the same way, right?
Hmm.
They they are businesses that they have systems in place and they have trained their employees and everything, and they're just consistent and they're just pushing forward consistent. You have to be consistent. If you go out in your business and you get 100 accounts today and
Hmm.
everybody wants business with you, and then you decide not to work for the next week or
Hmm.
two, you will lose all those accounts,
Hmm.
right? If I start calling you and emailing you and you don't answer me, and I text you and you don't answer me, and I send you a message on Instagram and you don't answer me, I'm gonna go find someone else,
Hmm.
right? Because you're not reliable. Now, if I do business with you and you're always there and you're always available and you're always answering the phone and you always provide quality work and you're consistent, well, then you'll always be doing fine.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So how do this is the contrary to this question. How do these people sabotage themselves? Let's say somebody makes a lot of money and they have a business that's actually making a lot of money right now. How do some people sabotage and just ruin it all in like in a few months? You know, how do some people lose it all when they were doing good a couple of months ago?
I think there's a lot of ways. One of the ways is thinking that you're too good. That you know, like I never think I'm too good. You know,
Mm,
I never feel like comfortable. You know, I think that's another big issue that a
mm,
lot of people with early success they mess up. They get very comfortable. They spend too much money on things that they shouldn't spend. They stop thinking about what the customer wants and what the customer needs. You know, as a business owner, your
mm,
100% focus should be always
mm,
on the customer's needs and on your employees' needs too, if you have employees.
mm,
Um, but that should be your focus. You know, a lot of people make early success. I know someone that's a friend of mine now that he actually, unfortunately, is going through a similar situation. He made a lot of money, and then he used that money personally for other things,
mm,
going through a very hard time because he used money that he wasn't supposed to, that belonged to the business, on personal stuff. So
mm,
if you use that belongs to the business on personal stuff, are you focusing on your needs or the
mm.
customer's?
Yeah.
You know, you have your priorities messed up. You know, I lived in a very small apartment for many, many, many years, and I was already a multi-millionaire, and I lived in a little tiny, I mean,
Mm.
maybe it was 4 feet for years because I didn't really care about where I lived. I was just so
Mm.
working, and the money that I made in the business, I reinvested it back into the business so the business could
Mm.
grow. I didn't say, "Oh man, I made some money. Let me buy a house and a car and shit that I want, a Rolex." That wouldn't make sense because you have to feed the business in order for it to grow. So if you take the food of the business, which is the money, and go put it into something else or use it for yourself, well, now you're hurting the business, right?
Mm.
So that's another way. So I mean, there's a lot of ways people can sabotage themselves and have sabotaged themselves.
Mm.
Uh, but those are a few.
Yeah, I do see some people that make like let's say 50K a month and they still live kind of like paycheck to paycheck. They only like they still spend the majority of their money because as their income increases, immediately like simultaneously with that, their expenses increase immediately, and
Well,
they
that's
always tend
wrong.
to do that.
Well,
So,
see, that's the type of shit I'm talking about. I didn't do that.
mm,
So what I did was I made lots of money. I continued to make money, and my personal expenses didn't increase at all.
Hmm.
Nothing. I didn't buy a Ferrari. I didn't buy a mansion. I didn't do any of that shit. What I did was I invested that money into, in my case, it was real estate.
Hmm.
So I diversified a little bit. So I didn't have everything in my business. I made some other investments so that those investments would pay me without working. I didn't have to do any
Hmm.
work anymore, right? Like how many of those people that make the 50K a month, if they decided, hey, look, I'm not going to work, do anything ever again, would make the 50,000? Probably not. But if
Hmm.
you have a rental property, if you have a building that's rented for $100,000 a month or $10,000 a month, you could literally not work and make $10,000 a month. So
Hmm.
that was my idea was I'm going to buy properties, rent them out, and have those properties pay me. Now, with that money, now that you
Hmm.
have that, you can get that money and blow it. Like that was my opinion. Yeah, well, yeah, because guess what? Next month it's coming again. And it's coming again. And guess what? I don't
Hmm.
have to work for money, right?
Hmm.
Money that I'm working for. So it's a
So,
different.
so this is the question I wanted to get to. Where's the right place to like start spending money from making a lot of money? Like, what's a good how should I say? What's the point where you can afford to start spending your money?
I think that's a personal decision. You know, it's all relative to what your goals are and how you define
Mm.
success. I just like to think of the future. I like to think of, you know, for example, like the story that you had with the steak. You made the $100, you spent it, you had a great time, you enjoyed that money. That was awesome. You had that experience, and it was incredible. For me, I would be thinking, okay, how can I enjoy this steak every Friday without having to work to pay for it,
Interesting.
right? That's what I want to do. I want to create. I want the money to work for me. I don't want to work for the money,
Mm.
right? So, what are the ways? And people do it in many different ways. There's many different businesses and investments and ways to make money. But that's how I like to think. How can I make this money multiply
Mm.
and consistently multiply so that I don't have to work and the money comes in?
Hmm. So that's interesting. Do you think there are like two types of like people are trying to make it in the business? It's like the ones that are calling themselves the lone wolves, the ones that are trying to do it all by their own, and there's the one that like the network, the like to get into places and to peak the people and make a lot more money than them, and they like to do networking with people on higher levels and learn from them. And do you think like do you think either one of these can work? Like networking also working and also doing it all by your own. And why do you think some people choose either one of these?
I think absolutely both can work, and they do work. I think even people who like to do things on their own, which is I'm a little bit more like that. I'd say
Mm,
than a network person. I really don't like to network all that much.
mm,
I like to make the decision. I feel like I'm making the right decisions. I know what I'm doing and saying, and I'm very confident in my decision making skills. But that being said, you always need someone. You always need
mm,
someone's help, whether it's someone that you hire or someone that you get advice from
mm,
or someone that you get inspired from. You're never truly going to do everything on your own. You could prefer to work
mm,
alone. You could prefer to own your business alone, and you could prefer to, manage people instead of coexist and work with them. But in every case, other people are going to be involved in your success for the most part.
mm. Interesting. So there are these like how should I say? There are people that have lost everything and then made it all over again. And they say like the first million is the hardest, but then it gets easier. Or like then you have the skill set, then you know how then you're better at it. You're not starting from scratch. Do you think it's harder mentally, or do you think it's easier to make it all back again after losing everything?
I think undoubtedly it would be easier because you know what it's like to get there and what
Mm,
it takes to. And it's just like a video game. If you've reached a certain level before,
mm.
you turn it off, you come back tomorrow, chances are you can get back to that level, right?
Hmm.
You've been, you know what to do. You know where to jump, you know where to crawl, you know where to
Mm,
shoot. Like, I think, yeah, it would definitely be easier because you have the experience. Experience is huge in business and in life.
mm. So you mentioned investments earlier. When do you think like some people should start investing? Like, and what should they invest in actually? Because there are so many options these age, like crypto, the stock market, real estate, and plenty of other like these shit coins, meme coins, and just plenty of other stuff to invest in, not just
Yeah.
like crypto and When do you think is a good point to start investing, and what?
I Every day of your life is a good time to start investing. As soon as you can, as soon
Mm,
as you have that you can invest. It also doesn't have to be money, it could be time. You can invest time into things and learn and get experience, for
mm,
example. Um, I think you should always invest, and I think you should invest into things that you understand, things
mm,
that you, not things that are sold to you. It should be things that you understand and you want to, you feel good about. Like I always tell people,
mm,
if I told you, hey man, you should really buy this, shit coin, whatever. It's the best one in the world. Trust me, I'm rich. I know what I'm talking about. Get $500 and put it in there. You're
mm,
not going to be sorry. And then next week it goes to zero. You'd
mm,
say, Max is an asshole. I can't believe I did this. I wasted my money. I feel stupid, whatever. Now, if it was your idea and you did the
mm,
research and you thought it was the best thing in the world to do and you thought it was a great idea and you invested and you felt great about it and you put your money in and next week it goes to zero, you'd probably feel good about it still. You would say, well,
mm,
my research and it felt good. I thought I was going to make it, but it is what it is. On
mm,
to the next one, right? It will feel different because it's your decision, not mine.
mm,
Something that you understood, and you understood a risk that you were taking, and you also understood what you could potentially gain if it went well for you. But when you're just
mm,
taking advice from random people, it's I wouldn't suggest it. That's all I'm
mm.
gonna say.
Interesting. So Sam Ovens, if you know who that is, Sam Ovens, he said once, um, the key to having a good run, well run business is hiring slow and firing fast. And I want to ask you, what do you think about it? What do you think is the main things about hiring people and firing that
I
should keep
don't
in mind?
I don't know who that is, but
Mm,
right, it's kind of like what I said earlier about hiring my friends. You got
mm,
to find the right people to fill a role.
mm,
Hire everybody. That's a pain in the ass. It's a waste of time. And then have someone and they're messing up or they're not performing correctly or whatever the case may be.
mm,
Yeah, you got to get them out because it's like the old saying, a bad apple ruins the whole bunch. It's the truth. When you have a disgruntled employee or someone who's just not a good
mm,
fit, it messes up the flow and the energy. You just got to get rid of them, you know.
mm,
But then when you replace them, you got to make sure you're getting the right replacement.
mm. Now, I have mentioned about being doing it all alone, like lone wolves, but it's like, do you think that there was any point in how a lot of people like to co-own businesses or start a business in two instead of on their own? What do you think about that?
A lot of people like to co-own businesses instead of. Can you repeat? I'm sorry.
Starting businesses with their buddy from fucking high
Or
school or some shit, and
my experience. My experience good in that area. I know a lot of people who've made it very big in that area. My personal experience has been a good one. You
why
know.
why do you think that is?
Yeah, I'm gonna send you a copy of my book. Have you gotten a copy of my book?
Not yet.
Yeah, I'm gonna send you one. I'm gonna have when we end this interview, I'll get your information. I'll mail you one.
Okay,
My
man. Go
not
ahead.
good. Yeah,
Mm.
my experience with that was not good, but they become very wealthy doing that. You know,
Mm.
it kind of ties into again what we just talked about. Just because you're your friend doesn't mean they're going to be a good business partner. So you really have to be aligned and understand the partnership more so. You really should have things in writing that say, you know, you're going to do this, I'm going to do that. If you don't do it, then this happens. If
Mm.
I don't do my job, then that happens. Right? Like there's details and there's paperwork, operating
Mm.
agreements that should be signed.
Okay,
Start a
interesting.
Yeah, because then later on when the fight starts and you get into a tug of war or a stalemate, as they say, what do you do? What do you do?
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, you're screwed.
Mm. A lot of entrepreneurs talk about the environment is like very important. Like if the people that you surround yourself with, obviously, if you still live with your parents, that can affect you. If you live in your old town with the same people from high school that are now alcoholics, and you still speak to the same people and you live in the same environment, um, that's like literally setting yourself up for failure. They say. What do you think? How important is environment in your opinion?
That's the best piece of advice that I give people. My opinion.
Mm.
Advice. I say the same thing. Surround yourself with draft. You know, if you
Mm.
grew up in a town and your dad is a janitor, the chances are he's not going to be teaching you about crypto and how to become a multi, right? Because he
Yeah.
just doesn't have. It's not that he's a bad guy. It's just he doesn't have that experience.
Hmm.
So if you want to learn about crypto and how to be a multimillionaire in crypto, you need to go find a guy who's a multimillionaire in
Mm.
crypto. And in the same token, if you wanted to be a janitor,
Mm.
you need to find a janitor. Hopefully, one with lots of experience, not a guy who's been in crypto. You know, it's the
Mm.
same backwards. You need to spend time with people who are getting the results that you're after.
Mm. Interesting.
Results. Okay, not just money. I made some money, like we talked about earlier.
Mm.
I'm an entrepreneur. At what level?
Mm.
At what level? And what level do I want to be?
Yeah.
If I say, you know, my goal is I want to make $1 million, my mentor that I'm looking for should have at least made $1 million. Guy that's only made 50,000, he's the wrong guy.
Mm. Interesting. So I want to ask you about um, negative people in general, and like if you have haters, and what do they say, and how do you actually? And yes, these may be like some little dweebs online that live in their mom's basement, but if they are like people in real life, like literally your own brother or somebody like you don't really want to get rid of,
Right.
that's literally trying to sabotage you. How do you deal with that?
Well, everybody has haters. You got the online and you got the people in your real
Mm.
life. And unfortunately, like you mentioned, sometimes they're your own friends and family.
Yeah.
You know, what I usually do is I do a variety of things, but generally speaking, it's a couple. So the first one would be
Mm.
I tell people straight up. So let's say it's your mom. Say your mom is being a hater and she's telling you, you know what, you're in that basement all day long studying crypto. You're never gonna make it. You're gonna be a loser.
Mm.
Go get a job. Go be a janitor like your dad, right? You know, I would sit down and talk to her and be like, hey, listen, mom, I love you. I appreciate you. Thank you for
Mm.
everything. Thanks for letting me live in your basement, mom. This is
Mm.
awesome. But I need you to not do that.
Mm.
Okay. I need you to not disempower me. You love me, right? You love me? You do.
Mm.
Okay. If you love me, you have to understand that this is something that I want to do. It's important to me. And if you're going to say negative things like that, I'm not going to want to talk to you. As a matter of fact, I'm not going to talk to you. So, sake of our relationship, either say nice things about this or don't say anything,
Mm.
but do not kick me, right? Don't beat me up. Don't kick me when I'm down. Don't disempower me. Don't try to discourage me. On the contrary, if you love me, you will be helping me go up. Good luck today studying crypto. Good luck with your business. Good luck with
Mm.
whatever it is you're. And so I usually do that. And then secondly, if that doesn't work, bye. It doesn't matter who it is.
Mm.
Doesn't matter. I have family that I don't talk to.
Mm.
I mean, and they're just fucking haters, bro. They can't help it, and it's by
Mm.
nature. They just talk shit, and it's maybe they're not even trying to do or be bad with you. It's just how they are, and they have nothing else to talk about but bullshit and make
Mm.
fun of you or whatever. And it's just like, all right, man, I don't have time for that shit. Go do that with someone else. I don't have time for that shit,
Mm.
right? So I just eliminate them.
So the biggest waste of time that I see is people trying to change the people that they hung around with from fucking high school or some shit,
Yeah.
and they don't want to change at all. And people trying to make them, like, how should I say it? You got a friend that like says, "Oh man, I want to start a business. I want to do this and that," and he doesn't take action, and you have to keep reminding him, and you have to keep telling him like, "Bro, you're fucking lazy. Come on, dude, let's do something." And I think that's a waste of time because if the person doesn't do it by their own, they don't intrinsically want it. And trying to change someone and make them want it is mostly like you detrimenting yourself, in my opinion. And I don't know if you agree with that or you think, is there any point in trying to motivate someone and trying to change?
No, I think trying to change people is a waste of time. I won't waste my time. Like I said, I'll give advice. You know,
Mm.
I'll give advice. I'll tell them what I see, maybe. But I also don't really like to give unsolicited
Mm.
advice because people get upset. Like you tell your friend right now, hey man, uh, you really should, get off your ass and start working. And you're
Mm.
wasting time. You're drinking too much or whatever. And then they're like, fuck you. What do you know? Like you're a know-it-all, right? And then they don't like the fact that you gave them that advice. So I try not to A, give them advice, and B, change them. There's
Mm.
an old saying that I really love, and it's when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Mm.
And it's the truth. When you start looking for that change, when you start saying, I want to make a change, I want to make some money, I want to learn stuff, you start finding the people to learn from. Look, today you asked me for an interview and I'm giving it to you.
Yeah.
I don't give interviews to everybody. You
Mm.
want to talk to me and ask me some questions, and here I am. If you
Mm.
didn't want to talk to me and didn't want to ask me questions, we would not be having this conversation.
Yeah.
But you were ready, right? You're ready to interview and what? Okay, so we're doing it, right? Years have passed since you were ready for this. Now you're not,
Mm.
right? So when your friends and family, if they ask for advice, if you feel like you should give them a piece of advice, maybe you do, but trying to change them is an absolute waste of your time. They're
Mm.
going to change already. Just like a piece of fruit on a tree, when it's not ripe, it's
Mm.
not ripe. You're not going to make it ripe and squeeze it and tell it, come on, get ripe. Come on, hurry up. It's not going to happen. You got to wait. When it gets ripe, it falls off the tree on its own.
Hmm. Interesting. So now the contrary to that, how can you tell if somebody really has potential? Like if somebody is worth you giving them advice to, spending some time like trying to help them. When do you think like how do you tell if somebody has potential and it's worth it your time to give them advice?
There's two things. Number one, I would say is action. When people
Mm.
take, that's when I know that they're serious, right? And
Mm.
they have potential because you don't have to know everything.
Mm.
Be the smartest guy. You don't have to be the best looking guy, the tallest, the strongest. You don't have to be all those things to be successful. You have to be the guy that shows up day after day and wants to
Mm.
get it done. And the more that you persist, the more opportunities you'll get, the more doors open for you, right?
Mm.
As you keep pushing, things start happening, right?
Mm.
And you're like, oh wow, look, now this happened and now that happened, and when you started thinking, I'm going to start interviewing people, you probably didn't own that microphone.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right? You didn't. It was just an idea. And the next thing you know, you got the computer, you got the microphone, you got an account with Google Meet. All these things
Mm-hmm.
have happened since that idea, since the
Yeah.
desire to do what you're doing. And that is the same with everything else. If you wanted to be a gardener, if you had the idea, I want to be a gardener, 3 months from now, you say, oh shit, I have a lawnmower, I have a weed eater, I have 4 people that I cut their grass, right? Like it starts to happen. And if I say, okay, 3 more years of gardening, you say, shit, I have a truck, I got 5 employees, I do 50 accounts in the neighborhood. If I go 10 more years, you know what I'm saying? It just keeps on growing. It keeps on, you keep getting bigger the longer that you're invested in, the longer that you're putting time in. Okay, it's just like the gym. You work out one day, nothing happens. Every single day, you start building a muscle. You're like, wow, this guy's biceps, right? You walk into the, you see the guy, that biggest guy in there for a week. The guy's been there for fucking years, right? Same thing.
When he spoke about the gym, that reminded me of my cousin when, he's older than me, yeah, but when he was my age, like I was 16, he was 17, and he told I was going to the gym for a year and a half already at this point, and he was like, and he's like, I'm just gonna call him a big guy. He's like, yeah, he's overweight. So
Right.
I said, why don't you go to the gym, man? Sometimes, you know. He said, man, I would like to go to the gym, but it's far from my home, and I'm gonna start going to the gym at 18 when I get my driver's license. So that's when I knew he wasn't serious. But second of all, when he turned 18 and he had a driver's license, I asked him again, why don't you go to the gym? He's like, man, you know what? I'm gonna be the only fat guy in there, and there's gonna be a lot of muscular dudes in there, and I'm gonna be insecure. I'm like, bro, literally, do you want to go to the gym when you're muscular? How do you plan on getting the muscles? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, you literally go. You're fat. You don't want to go to the gym because you're fat. No, you go to the gym to lose that fat and to build muscle. But it's
That's
like,
why you're,
yeah. But
exactly.
everybody's trying to make everything so perfect, and I'm like, man, fucking hell. I was starting doing this podcast with with literally like the shittiest equipment, but I started anyhow, and I improved it over time. Yeah, but then again, I bought a better camera, etc. But I started somehow, and then I figured out a better. I even the outreach messages and everything. I had to perfect that, man. I sent like hundreds of outreach messages, and like also another thing, a friend of mine like told me, man, you should only like speak to like really, you cannot DM millionaires and big influencers, and they're never gonna respond to you, you're not gonna do it, etc. I'm like, you know what, man, fuck that. I literally on my second ever podcast, I DM'd Andrew Arteca. He had like 500,000 followers, and he was a really good entrepreneur already. And I'm like, I didn't believe it that he did a podcast with me at the time. So that showed me that it doesn't matter how many followers they got. It doesn't matter how much money they got. I'm still gonna try, and like literally, it's not just, oh, let's try with somebody that's making a couple thousand a month. I'm gonna try to speak to everybody and see who's interested in speaking to me. So that I didn't try to make it perfect. Never.
Yeah, that's good. The right time to do anything is usually now. The time is now. Fucking do it. You don't have to overthink. Get it done, man. Do it.
Okay.
Do it.
I would like to get into some rapid fire questions before we wrap up. So these are just some questions. You can answer them in long, short. That's up to you. Are you ready?
Yep.
Okay. If you could rewind time, to what age would you rewind, and what would you do differently?
I would. I'd probably go to when I sold my business and just invest more in real estate after I sold the business.
Interesting. So, what's the best advice you've ever received?
That I ever received? Oof, man, I've gotten a lot of advice. I don't know. I don't know how to answer that one.
So, some good advice that you've received. It doesn't have to be the best one
Um,
either.
I like if you look up, you can get up. That's a
Mm.
phrase. You look, you can look up, you can get up, which basically
Mm.
means, as long as you're alive and healthy and
Mm.
have your physical body, you can make something happen. You don't need to,
Mm.
the circumstances don't need to be perfect. You don't need to be rich. You don't need to be, if you
Mm.
can just physically able to, you can do it.
Mm. Now, contrary to that, what's the worst advice you've been given?
It's not possible. It's
uh,
I when I had a goal of selling my company for 25 million, I had a guy that
mm.
I looked up and I asked him, "Hey, what do you think I can do to sell my business for 25 million?" He told me it was not possible.
Mm.
I didn't
Mm.
listen to him. I said a lot like what you said. I was like, "Fuck you. Fuck that. I'm not listening to that shit." And I sold it for 37 million. So
Mm.
there you go.
What was your biggest failure and what have you learned from it?
I think my biggest failure was spending too much time with the wrong woman.
Mm.
That affected that
I, can, I,
affected
can, I can see that. Yeah. Interesting. Is reading a waste of time?
No, absolutely not. You always learn, develops the brain. I think it's a very good exercise.
Mm. Do you have a favorite quote?
My favorite quote, um, well, I'll give you one from my book. Not now does not mean not ever.
Mm. Interesting.
Just because it's
That's a
not,
good one.
yeah, just for you right now doesn't mean it's never gonna happen.
Hmm. What's your proudest moment in life?
I would say getting my business back was
Mm.
there was a moment where I lost it and I had to get it back,
Mm.
and getting it back was probably my proudest moment. That and also selling it, but really, it was getting it back.
Mm. Describe yourself in 2 words.
Human being.
I like that. I like that. Do you think there is any correlation between, as some people say, health and wealth? Do you think there's any correlation between that?
Well, I think without your health, you don't have anything, but you can also be very healthy and be broke off your ass. So, you know, it depends on what kind of wealth you're looking for.
Mm.
Physical health is extremely important because without it, you don't have anything. So,
Mm.
I mean, it's a way to look at, at least if you have your physical health, you're wealthy to some degree. But now, if you have that physical well-being, what are you going to do with it?
Mm.
Like your fat cousin. What is he doing?
Yeah.
Right? What he could be healthy.
Mm.
He might be healthy right now. Technically,
Mm.
maybe he's overweight, but he's healthy. But what is he doing with it? Making excuses and
Mm.
not living a life to his full potential? Well, that's a shame. You know,
Mm. That's a shame
that's
because.
yeah,
Ah, go ahead.
yeah, that he's not using.
Mm, yeah, it's a shame when it's somebody you care about and you know is a good person, you want the best for them, but they're so
Yeah,
stubborn that they don't want to listen. And I'm like, fucking hell, man, I don't want to be a dickhead to you. I just want to help you
yeah,
somehow
yeah,
because I care about you.
yeah.
Mm.
We just let
So,
him know that. You let him know.
mm,
Love you, care about you. I want the best for you. I just want you to know if there's ever a time that you want to pursue coming to the gym and eating healthy, we can
mm,
take it, even work out with you at the house if you want until you feel
mm,
ready. I'm here to help you, and that's it. You don't pester him.
mm,
You just let him know that you're there for him.
mm. What advice, this is the last question, what advice would you give to your 17-year-old self?
Buy Apple stock. Man, you could have bought stocks back then so cheap and
Mm.
just made millions, bro. But like life advice or business advice, I don't know. 17, I was going through a lot of stuff at 17.
Mm.
just reassuring advice, just to keep persisting. Things are usually not as bad as that they seem,
Mm.
and sometimes you feel like you're going through the worst time of your life. You have a
Mm.
storm, like everything on top of you, but
Mm.
that's this week, that's this month, that's this year. You fast forward 2 3 years from now, that stuff's not happening anymore. You don't even think
Mm.
about those things. So a lot of times the worst times in your life, you have to remember that they're just temporary.
Mm.
It doesn't rain forever. Storms don't last forever, like they say.
Mm.
There's But then there's also clear skies. So when you're going through those type of moments, you have to remember there's always going to be light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak.
Mm. So, what's next for Max Lewis?
Well, I'm writing a movie script for the based off of the book.
Mm.
Hoping to, have someone produce a movie about it. That's
Mm.
something I've been working on.
Mm.
Besides that, I'm just doing business, man. I
Mm.
do a lot of different. I get a lot of different businesses and enjoying life. That's about it.
Yo, the movie that would be something really interesting to see. I'm looking forward to that. So,
Let's
where
see.
can people find you, brother?
On Instagram, I'm pretty active. Who is Max Lewis Instagram? The book is available on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, Audible, lots of different other outlets. On your side of the world, I'm not sure if it would if it is on Amazon in that part of the world.
Yeah,
Maybe you
it
can
is.
check.
It is.
It is. Okay, that's cool. Um, yeah, and those platforms, I'm easily accessible.
Mm. Okay. Well, thank you a lot for taking the time for this. And guys, thank you a lot for watching till the end. And I'll catch you guys all on the next one.
All right, man. Take care.